Hey y'all, Melissa here with you today, and today we're going to be talking about dress forms. This is kind of like one of your sewing questions answered, but it's based on a sewing question that I got a long time ago. In fact, I have an article that I've linked below, and that is the answer to people kept asking me, would a dress form help them get better fit when they're trying to fit patterns for themselves? And the too long didn't read version of that is, if you are not like standard pattern size, a standard size dress form is not going to help you very much. So this dress form, standard size dress form, in the bust and hip circumference, she's the same size as me, but I cannot use this to fit patterns for myself because there are other important differences. The biggest important difference here is that her high bust is a lot bigger than mine because I have a very small chest and then I am full busted. I'm not a B cup, and most standard size patterns and standard size dress forms are for a B cup. In addition, there's some height differences here. Even though I've got us like at about the same shoulder height, her waist is about an inch lower than mine because I have a high waist. And I'm short. I'm only 5'3", and standard pattern drafting size, at least for my patterns, is 5'6". Things vertically are just not going to fit me from this standard size dress form. Why do I have it then? Because I design patterns. So patterns are designed for a standard size, and then, at least in my patterns, there are alteration instructions to help you customize that for your exact body. But if you're trying to fit your exact body and it's not standard and you're using something that is standard, they're just not going to work together. So I want to spend the rest of this video talking about this dress form instead, and we're just going to move her on out of the way. This dress form here, I sewed myself. And if you need a dress form and you're using it for the purposes of getting better fit for yourself, this is the route I recommend. If flat patterning doesn't work for you, working in 2 dimensions and understanding how darts and things like that, how to measure and translate that measurement to the flat pattern, if none of that is making sense in your head and you need to see it in 3D, this is the type of dress form that I recommend. This dress form came about for me because of the pandemic, and I was used to fitting my patterns on actual plus size people. But then everything got shut down and I wasn't seeing any actual plus size people because they didn't live in my household. So I needed to figure out how could I fit things in 3 dimensions to double check my flat patterns if I didn't have a person to fit. So I started looking online for standard size but plus size dress forms. And what I found was I could not find dress forms over about a size 22. That was the largest I was able to find. And even when I could find those, once I did that plus shipping, they were pretty expensive, like at least $1,000. But the biggest kicker for me was I couldn't get them shipped in anything like a timely manner. Like I was in the middle of working on a pattern when things shut down, and I didn't want to delay it for months because I couldn't fit my fit model and because I couldn't get a dress form to stand in for the fit model. So I started looking around online and I came to the Bootstrap Fashion website. And on their website, you can order dress form patterns, and they have a few options. They have a lot more options now than they did a year ago when I was ordering things. They had just like you could choose a standard size dress form or a custom size dress form. So this is the custom size dress form. And now they have like a Missy size dress form and a plus size dress form. At the time, it was just one custom dress form and you could put in whatever measurements you want. So that's what I did, was I put in the measurements that I was used to drafting for my plus sizes. And then this is what we came up with. So let me show you what the pattern looks like to make this. So once you get to your pattern, here's kind of what it looks like. This is, I just scaled my large format pattern, but I just wanted you to be able to see kind of what the pattern pieces look like. So it's very similar to sewing together like a princess seam dress form combined with these cup pieces here are parts of the bra bust area. And then we've got like the neck pieces, and this is what the cardboard and the zipper flaps on the bottom look like. And this is the inner construction piece here. So there's the socket for the PVC pipe to go in, and then the front and the back, and those are attached at center front and center back of the dress form. Just to give you an idea of what you'd be getting. And then of course the measurements change and the size of the pieces change depending on what size you order. In addition to that pattern, you need quite a few other supplies. This is made out of just muslin fabric, which I put fusible interfacing on the back side for like every single piece. Like everything is interfaced on mine. And that's because I wanted to use this muslin. You don't have to use muslin. They actually recommend things like, I think the sample one in the instructions was sewn in a brocade. I just wanted it to look as much as possible like my standard dress form did. So I was using the muslin fabric, but other supplies that you need to buy. There's a sponge in the neck. So I bought a car washing sponge, and then there's a template to cut this neck portion out. You have to buy, let's lift this up. You have to buy some kind of stand. This is a like Hall hat stand. And I will link it below, but I just bought that on Amazon, and I didn't put like the sticks where you would hang your hats on it. I didn't put those on. This is just the lower pieces. Let me lift this off so you can see a couple of the other things that are additional materials besides fabric. So as I'm taking this off, you can see there is a PVC pipe, and you are supposed to like glue the PVC to the inside of this form, and you can put like something on it so that it is the correct length height-wise for your stand. Now I didn't do that. I just skipped that step, and I was using a piece of PVC that I already had in my garage. But you can see on the bottom now, so this is cardboard, and then there's zippers, and that's part of how you assemble the form and how you get the stuffing in. You stuff the whole thing, and then the cardboard goes in last, and then you put the whole thing on a stand. There's also cardboard here in the arm side area. She's filled with polyfill. I ordered this giant box of it. The pattern does tell you about how many pounds of polyfill you'll need to fill yours up. This box came with 2 compressed bags, this size. This is how they expand when you open. I used 1 entire bag plus a little bit of this bag to make this dress form. So that's why it is a little heavy. It's not just like most dress forms are kind of like an inner shape with a cover on them and they're hollow. This is not hollow. Cost-wise, I know that's going to be a question. So while this is way more cost-effective than what I was looking at to get custom forms, and it was a much shorter timeline to get this done than to order a custom form, wait for it to be built, wait for it to get shipped out to me, this was still not cheap. So I can't give you an exact cost because I used a lot of materials that I already had on hand in my stash. I can tell you it cost me, I think, between $120 and $150 for the additional things I bought for it. But the things I did not buy. I did not buy a zipper. I did not, because I had that in my stash. I did not buy fabric or interfacing because I had both of those things in my stash. I did not buy thread. I did not buy the cardboard. I had that around. The PVC pipe we had from another project, so I had that already. Just for the stand, the polyfill, the pattern, the sponge, that kind of stuff, I think that's where I got into the $120 range. I think if I bought everything for this, it probably would have ended up somewhere $150 to $200 that I would have spent in materials for this. So that's really comparable to buying a ready-made dress form and then you still have to put in all the time to make it. I still would recommend going this route over ready-made because you can get your exact measurements. So that's one of the things I liked about this pattern is I did put in custom measurements that I wanted to use based on the figure that I draft for. And it came out once I stuffed it. And of course you can use, or you should use, a measuring tape as you're stuffing it to make sure that you're getting to the circumference and the measurements that you want to. But this came out very true to size, I think, for what I was looking for, like the bust circumference, the hip circumference, the neck to waist, because you put in like lengthwise measurements as well. All of those things really looked like I expected them to look. The things that I didn't like about this pattern is that yes, you do have to put a lot of time and effort into it. This probably took a week for me to completely finish with. And that's not that I was, spending like 8 hours a day every day, but I was spending a few hours a day, a couple to 3 hours a day every day in cutting out the pattern, in fusing all the interfacing to my fabric, in stitching things together, making sure I was being really careful about matching things up where they were supposed to, in making sure I understood the instructions before I sewed things together. I satin stitched, this is kind of optional, but I satin stitched under the bust and on the side seams here. And that's because I wanted to be able to feel those seams under fabric if I was using this to drape. And that takes time to do it neatly. All of those things, like, stuffing it, that took me a good, probably an hour just to stuff it, measure it, make sure that everything was distributed correctly so that it was the size I wanted it to be. The other thing that I don't like about this one that may have been solved by the fact that they now offer a plus size pattern is I think in the lower body in particular, there are some figure things that maybe would not happen on an actual body. And the main one that bothers me is this right here. You can see there's kind of an indent into the belly. And that's partially a function of the fact that there is a seam here. I kind of wondered almost like what would have happened if I had cut these two pieces on a fold instead. Would that have helped? I'm not sure, because I think that this indentation is partially being caused by that inner support system and the sock thing that goes on the PVC pipe. I do know they sell a dress form cover pattern that you can buy, and that if I was to make that and then cover my dress form, that would completely skim over this indentation, and I could even put stuffing in there if I wanted it to not be hollow, and that would solve it. So this isn't a deal breaker for me, it's kind of a minor annoyance. That happened kind of in the back as well. I think it happened to a lesser extent in the back because I do think people tend to have this indentation in their back on actual real bodies. And it doesn't happen at the waistline here. But conversely, I feel like it's too much of an indentation in the front and not enough of one in the back to make this more realistic as like the buttocks of someone and how that would actually be shaped. So again, this is something that it's not a deal breaker. I can still do the fitting that I need to do on this. The measurements that I need to be correct are correct on this. And I still think that this is a better option if you're trying to fit your own body and you're not standard size. I think this is a better option than buying a standard size dress form. So I'm linking this below. I'm linking my article about why I don't know that dress forms are necessarily the best way to figure out how to fit your own body. And I am also going to link a playlist over here. If there are more sewing tips that you're interested in, they might be in that playlist, so maybe check that out.